Peju. Welcome to Alara.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're very excited to have you. We have your exhibition coming to Alara soon. It's a very important exhibition to us at Alara. We are very much, it's important to us to celebrate history, nostalgia, culture, our heritage, preservation of it, understanding of it, exploring of it. It's a very important aspect of what we do here, in total celebration of who we are as Nigerians and as Africans. So when I saw your exhibition, I was super excited. I felt a great connection to you and what you do, and it was important that I hunted you down and found a way to bring you to our space. First of all, to show your exhibition, but also for you to inspire the young kids of today to understanding our culture, and finding a way to celebrate it. So Indigo Reimagined is a great addition to what we do in Alara. It will educate a lot of people. It will help people see the kind of talent that we have in Nigeria and Africa. And also, particularly, it will help us celebrate you as a woman who we feel has done so much for the culture, and also who will inspire a lot of young women and men alike. So, as an icon, we're happy to have you here. And I wanted to have a chat with you to expose more of who you are and why you do what you do. So I'm going to start by trying to introduce you, if that's okay, in a very informal way, because I'm sure a lot of people that are going to be watching this have already read a little bit about what you have done with Indigo, the exhibition Indigo Reimagined. I know that you are a princess, that your mom was a princess of the Benin state, and also that you also straddled two cultures in Nigeria, and your dad was Yoruba, the Olowo family. And I found that also very interesting, and I think it was a great start for the way that your career and your life has gone. So straddling two very important cultures in Nigeria is very important. And also that your mom is an icon and is a sculptor, and that you followed her, followed her steps. I also have sort of tried to learn a little bit more about you and how you grew from being somebody who was working as an artist into being an academic, to being the head of the Creative Arts Department in Lagos University twice. And also, I'm going to keep going, I know I'm talking a lot, and also about the exhibitions that you've had and the importance of what I would say is the importance of what colonization did to our culture and the importance of how we can repatriate a lot of the great work that we had. And I see that you're a strong believer in that, and that you've done a few shows that reflect that. So all this is super important, and I just use that as an introduction of what an icon you are, and also just to wanting to look behind that a little bit and asking you, who is Peju? And what is the impact? We can see from your work the impact you're trying to make. What is the most lasting impact that you hope to have on our generation, and that coming behind us?
I'll start by thanking you for inviting me, and also for collaborating with Alara. I believe very much in what you're doing here. It's amazing. And Father, also inspiring a lot of young people, and projecting our culture, which is very rich.
Thank you.
Peju Layiwola is a very quiet artist. I do my work very quietly. Incidentally, because I worked in the university environment for very many years, I've had a great impact on younger artists and young students. I started teaching in the university at the age of 23 in 1991 at the University of Benin. So I've traveled through universities in Nigeria, at the University of Benin, University of Ibadan, and currently University of Lagos. I would say that it was my first job, so I really did not have much the opportunity to choose because I came out as a best student of the University of Benin and the job was there waiting for me. So I didn't think about doing any other thing. But I also think that I was inspired greatly by my mother, Princess Elizabeth Nia Kenzo, who is an artist, first sculptress from the University of Benin. And in growing up in Benin, I learned a lot from her. I learned the virtues of hard work. Hard work was very important. She was a very hardworking person. And even though she was a daughter of a king, she instilled in us that consciousness of working hard and being focused. And we should be focused in whatever we do. And then she ran a lot of projects, a lot of workshops with less privileged women in the city. Then the Delta state government will hire her to teach women in the marketplace, at the town hall and all of that. And I would go with her. And I learned a lot from her, impacting the lives of younger people less privileged. And I think that was the beginning point for me to think about doing that kind of thing when I had the opportunity of doing so in 1994 to set up what is known now as Women and Youth Arts Foundation, where I use the skills that God had given me, the talents that I acquired over the years to impact the lives of women. Because I believe that if you teach a woman the skill, she's more likely to pass it on to her kids, and in that way, the skills move around in the family. So I set up this foundation in 1994, and since then we've done a lot of workshops within Nigeria and outside of Nigeria, and it has impacted the local community where we find ourselves. So I think that for me, it is directly passing on the talent that I have onto younger people with that are less privileged, and transforming their lives in that way means that they could also make a living from extra skills that they've acquired from whatever art forms or craft that we teach them. And this has really been very impactful over the years. So we went on to do the first set of video CDs in Nigeria, which we call vocational training. And within 7 years, we sold over 300,000 copies.
Wow.
And that also showed a gap in the educational system in Nigeria. There was so much emphasis on the sciences. I came from a science background into the arts. But there's very little that people appreciate, about African art or art as a course of study. You find that when a child is painting or drawing, parents say, "Oh, go and read your books." I say, "This is not something really worthwhile."
Yes.
So I felt that this gap could be filled by, teaching people skills and passing it on new video that could easily be disseminated. So in that way, children could learn how to do art, and also the parents are brought into the process of art making. And I think that's also very, very impactful. So I'd say in a nutshell, education within the formal sector and informal sector.
Because you're straddling both, actually.
Exactly, straddling both of them. And I think that they both complement each other beautifully. I would say that has been my strongest impact.
And in terms of the informal, how do you think that we can do more of that? How do you think, is it possible to get more support? How do you see this creating a chain of many more people doing this so that we can start to have a lot of people who have learned very well, but informally? Because not everybody can go to university.
Exactly.
So how do we keep doing this? What are your ideas for the future?
I would say that, most times we always say that, we always expect the government to do everything for us. But I think that Nigerians are beginning to think out of the box, and we've seen the possibilities of synergy.
Yes.
I think that is what's lacking in Nigeria.
Yes.
We have to come together as groups,
Yes.
not just as individuals.
Yes.
We're doing wonderful things as individuals. So
Yes.
I think that we could collaborate.
Amazing.
And collaboration means that you have more, more output.
Yes.
In terms of the local craftsmen, I
Yes.
think they're doing that already when it comes to textiles.
Yes.
You go to a place like Abuja or even Akerele,
Yes.
Surulere,
Yes.
you find that there are quite a number of them who put their resources together.
Yes.
You have artists cooperating.
Yes.
So you have those who are selling dyes, those who are tying. So there's a great there's a division of labor.
Yes.
And that way they are able to produce more.
Yes.
And so people meet them as a group.
Yes.
They become a stronger force to
Yes.
identify with. And I think that's what should happen. We have several crafts groups all over Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria is so blessed a country. We have very talented people. And I think that what is lacking is that we want to go solo. I think that if we come together, put resources together, you can achieve much more. Yeah.
Amazing. But also what I find is that, for instance, as you said, previously, traditionally, most people wanted their kids to go into the sciences. But gradually, I'm meeting a lot of parents and a lot of young kids who have just decided that, you know what, I want to be an artist, I want to be in the creative industries. And it's, from being in Alara, we noticed that is happening a lot more. People are being able to express that part of them and feeling proud of it. It's taking time, and sometimes you get a kid who wants to do this, but their parents are putting a lot of pressure on them to do something else. But I think that in Alara, we've been able to find, and we still find, young people who are deciding to do that. But what is lacking is that sometimes they have been to school and they have ideas of what they want to be, but they don't know enough about our culture. They don't know enough about the artisans, because as you know, kids today are not very good at digging very deep. It's, you know, sometimes the internet world makes everything appear accessible, and that's not real. Because if you dig really deep, you see so much in our culture that you can benefit from, especially when you're doing design. So we are looking for ways to connect that young kid who has done formally, has been educated formally in whatever area of the creative industries, to link them to historically what we've been doing, like what the artisans are doing. So these associations you're talking about, it would be great to be able to bring the new designers in the new world to them, to be able to create something very special for us as Nigerians, to start things that nobody else has seen before, that expresses what we are culturally and is actually beautiful and very well made. So I think that it's very important to me that we start to look for ways, and I hope you would agree, that going forward we look for ways to connect the two worlds. We have a space that's super dynamic. We're happy to have, you know, sort of associations and, you know, meetings, or we can find places. But I really think this conversation, what you're doing with Y Art, would be great for us to be able to do that with different groups. So I'm wondering if you're open to that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's so important. I think that the disconnection we talk about
is
real.
Yes.
But I think because the younger generation are also given to technology, you can actually find a way in which you can make it accessible to them. History, culture, accessible to
Amazing.
them through technology.
Yes.
It's very, most of the projects I've done, I've leaned very heavily on history. But I think that is so vital, because you must know what is happening, what has happened in the past.
In order to move forward. Yes.
And if you, and I think in this very global world, you have to have something that's unique.
Yes.
Your identity is something that stands you out.
Yes.
And if you do not have something that you can lean on,
yes.
Like we have in Africa, I mean, the cultures are so rich, so vibrant. It's such a loss if you are disconnected from the culture and you call yourself an African or Nigerian.
Yes. Or even a designer that's Nigerian or African.
Because there's so much. It's so much from jewelry to textiles, ceramics, pottery. There's so much you can draw.
Yes.
And that will enrich your art. I mean, in many ways that has done so for my own art as well.
Yes.
Like you mentioned in your introduction, being Benin and being Yoruba has impacted tremendously on my art. These are two very strong countries.
Yes.
And I see that I draw from both of them, and it really makes my work really very rich. I think that should be for every designer, every artist, every textile designer, or anybody in the industry.
Amazing. So we're going to do lots of things together.
That would be great.
But also, I also wanted to speak about something that's a little bit probably more serious, and which is repatriation.
Okay.
Our stolen treasures.
Okay.
And the importance of having them back in our country and in our, in our land. How do you see this happening, if at all? And when they do come back, they need to be somewhere. What do you think is going to happen to the museum culture, or if you think there's any, there's hope that could happen, and that we could find places to place these treasures in the future?
Well, I'll start by saying that it's very important that we see these artifacts and these very iconic objects within our own space. I've done a lot of work with the bronze casters in Benin, who are descendants of those who produced the works that you can find in the British Museum and other museums in Europe and America.
Yes.
And they always spoke about the fact that they had to rely very heavily on the catalogs that come from these museums.
Yes.
So they have to copy from that. And they had no access to the objects that were stolen, that were done by their grandparents, great-grandparents. But for the younger generation, and for you and I, it's important that we could go somewhere to see these works and inspire our works as well.
Yes.
And these works have been away for over a century. And in fact, they've inspired a lot of works of other artists in those countries.
Yes.
So you find that a child who attends a primary school in London, for example, has better access than
Yes, and the kid from here. Yes.
So that kind of imbalance has to be corrected.
Yes.
And when we talk about museums, we not necessarily have to talk about it in terms of a physical space,
Yes.
a building. We never really had museums, yes, in our traditional societies, and they were domiciled in most times in the palaces,
Yes.
okay? And they were the archives of the people. In Benin, the reason the British had it so easy to take up the works, the one clean sweep, was because the works were on shrines and were also kept in a room,
Yes.
which was left there for several decades, because the king was the custodian of the people, the custodian of culture. And so they took away these artifacts and in a sense took away the archives of history. And that in a sense is really something that we have to find a way of balancing and correcting. But if you talk about a museum in terms of not just the location, not just the physical building, some of the places you talked about are the artist ateliers, the studios, where artists are working together, like you find for the textile designers. Yes. Those are museums in their own
yes.
right.
Yes.
Because, and in fact, they are living museums. Because it's history that is recounted in that space. It's also history that is not static, it's dynamic, it keeps moving. And so these are the kind of places that we should be thinking about, reordering the concept of a museum.
That's very interesting, actually.
And I think that if we now want to look at it in terms of the physical space, then we have people who are really thinking about that in greater ways, like Yemisi Shima, who's going to open this museum soon. That is an individual who has dedicated his entire resources into keeping the works that are done by a large number of Nigerians within Nigeria. And I think it's so important. And one of the reasons you find that a lot of young people are not able to go into the arts is because there were no role models. The arts were, in a sense, subjected to, they're not really recognized as such. But now we're having more and more role models.
Yes.
And you cannot have that kind of continuity. You do not have something that is there, that is very firmly situated. So when you have a collector who buys the works of artists, who has collected over several centuries, and has captured historical time, has also put together a broad spread of works that go over several seasons and several periods, and it keeps it within the country. In a sense, it's doing a great service to Nigeria, because you now find a lot of people can now draw on those works. Otherwise, they go out again and the artifacts that were looted and repatriated,
yes.
that were looted and plundered.
True.
So we must think about it in a more creative way, but I know that there are a lot of other plans to return the works.
Yes.
Particularly the ones that were stolen from Benin in 1997. These are negotiations that are going on, but I think that one of the things that has really helped this discourse is that people have been agitating over time. People have been clamoring, including artists as well, who have done quite a lot of work in terms of musical forms, plays and art exhibitions that we had in 2010, addressing this issue. Telling people to address this moral issue, because I think it's really a moral issue for you to loot the artifacts of the people and keep them in the museums.
Yeah, not return them, yes. True.
So, I think that it is so important that we bring back our children into understanding the language, our language, and our culture. Because I tell you that if you do not do that, there will be no continuity, and they will be totally disconnected in this new world, this very global world,
yes.
in this very global village.
Amazing, amazing. Talking about storytelling,
yeah.
Of course, one of my favorite pieces in your Indigo Reimagined is the Oja Oje pieces.
Yes,
I am intrigued.
okay.
Intrigued by number one, the vast collection you had of indigo fabrics, and also intrigued by your connection to your deep connection to the city of Ibadan. I lived in Ibadan myself. My mother is from Ibadan,
Wow.
Beyaruka in particular. And we spent a lot of our youth sort of going to different markets, being part of a lot of festivals that happen in Ibadan. So I have a very strong sort of love for Ibadan as well. But looking at Oja Oji, that's the name of the
Yes,
the quilt.
Ojo
Oja Oji, the Oje Market Day.
Exactly.
And looking at the palette and looking at the different ways that you've told a story from these little bits of these quilts, can you sort of talk to us a little bit about your emotional connection to Ibadan,
Okay.
the reflection on that piece of work,
Okay.
and the issue of telling stories in our culture?
Okay, great. Well, that work for me takes me back to 1989 when I got to the University of Ibadan to study art history at the university. And I found Ibadan very similar to Benin where I grew up, except that it was very large and could meet many more people, very populous city. But I also found that it was very easy to move around, and it was quite cheap. As a student, we didn't have much money, so we would go to the market and buy a lot with very little. And I fell in love with the city. Very similar to Benin in terms of being a cultural town. And so later I got married and I had to move to Ibadan. My husband actually teaches at the university, he's a professor of theatre in the University of Ibadan. So I moved into the city in 1994 and had my son also in that same year. And I found the city, like the best place to live on earth, honestly. So Oja Oji. I like the way it sounds. Okay, it's a work that talks about the market day in Ibadan. Market day, the Oji market day. And in the early 90s, I used to go to Oji market to buy fabrics, and you could get really vintage cloth there. The market opens every 17 days. In Ibadan, you could buy the best range of ashoke. In fact, at very good prices at the J market. So you find people coming from all over the southwestern part of Nigeria to sell their wares. But historically, it was the markets, the main market for clothing in West Africa. So it wasn't just from the local market. And so some of my early prints I did in 2002 were inspired by my visits to AJ markets. There was actually some of them I painted or did that reflected lizards on the fabric at the J market. So very commonplace things were represented in that work that I did, body of work I did in 2002. So but that particular work speaks about the interconnections between cities. In Osogbo was known as the city of dyers, because we had a large number of dyers in Osogbo. People used to take fabrics from Abeokuta, from Ibadan to Osogbo to dye. And because the indigo plant, indigo thrived in that environment, we found that most of the dyers were concentrated around Osogbo and Ede. And we also know that Abeokuta is a major dyeing center as well, and of course the Toko market is known for.
I want to say something very quickly, because this the importance of cities in Indigo is very, very debated.
Highly debated.
So it's very interesting because I'm both Ibadan and I'm also Abeokuta.
Okay.
And I know from Abeokuta, we say we're the ones that own the indigo plant.
Okay.
But also, Osogbo says they're the ones that own the indigo plant. But apparently there's a mystical issue around the indigo plant, which we can talk about after, and that most people did not want to reveal the source exactly because apparently there's some power it has. But that we can discuss later. Let you continue.
Okay, so that work talks about this connection between these cities, because these were all dyeing centers and they were very prominent in the textile industry in pre-colonial Nigeria. So it also talks about the connection between the markets. Because some of the fabrics I bought from OJ market, I bought some from Royal markets, which is known for the sale of really vintage cloth, fabrics that are second hand. and
Oroyo Market.
Oroyo Market.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
So, it's very popular for the sale of goods. They sell goods in the market as well.
Oh,
They also
interesting.
sell a lot of fabrics there.
Can we still get vintage fabrics in Oroyo?
Yes.
I'm going.
Every day you could get that. Then, I know you go everywhere there's good clothes.
Yes, I'm going.
So, then I also got from Baggy Market. You
Okay.
have the new Baggy and old Baggy Market.
Yes, yes.
And I got some from my local market as well. But again, it speaks about the connection between local markets and international markets.
Yes.
Because Indigo was done very early in Nigeria. But we also find that the British exported a lot of cotton to Nigeria towards the end of the 19th century. And so they also established a lot of firms, British firms in Nigeria. And again, this market, this trade, this economic, this trade in fabrics and the trade in fabrics within the local markets and international markets were established through the links, through exportation of fabrics into Nigeria. So that work looks at all of that, the economic history of textiles in Nigeria and with British traders from Manchester.
Yes.
So it also tells us about the fact that even though it was an ancient art,
Yes.
art of indigo dyeing, the art of adire making, because adire comprises different techniques. The generic name for adire alabere, adire oniko, and adire leko, which is typically European. But it tells us that the artists moved their creative sensibilities from dyeing yarns and they used to weave ashoke onto a new canvas, which was the British Shirtings that was imported from Manchester. And so I took a lot of those fabrics and I actually started that work with a variety of indigo designs, which I got from here and there. And I built it up to a part that talks about, that shows the yellow ochre, maroon colors, and all the bright colors that depicts or reference J.P. Clark's poem in 1965 that talks about the Ibadan. It's a kind of critique of the Ibadan, but in a sense it also talks about it in a very flowery way. So that work situates the J Market in Ibadan, and I hinge on J.P. Clark's poem to talk about the J Market that is located in Ibadan. And then we move on to another part which is really shows a broad range of designs, and we use black and white for the contrast to talk about the fact that Nigeria has become a dumping ground. With such a rich history that goes back to about the 9th century AD with the excavation of textile fabrics from Igbo in eastern Nigeria to the 13th century fabric that was known as Bonokwa, Benin cloth, the white Benin cloth that was sought after by Europeans to the weaving of ashoke in different universities. But today, 2019, Nigeria has become a dumping ground for other countries who bring in all manner of fabrics, some of them very cheap, polyester. And so the market is full of things other than things that were made indigenously in Nigeria. And if you look at textile history, you see that the sale of fabrics, the importation of textiles cotton into Nigeria, grew from about 200,000 pounds in 1891 to about over 6 million in 1920. That was the scale of trade that was made.
Wow.
In a sense, it truncated the development of textiles in Nigeria.
Totally.
If we had allowed textile industry to develop, you can imagine what would have been produced.
Would have done even like cotton growing, processing.
Exactly.
It's a huge business that it could have been.
So the British saw the potential, and in fact, the British colonial assistant in Lagos saw that the Yoruba person was really very elegant, liked to appear in public very well dressed. And apart from wearing clothing, we want to hold several yards of fabric, we want to hold Igbo.
Yes, we have pieces that we just hold.
You have
your head on your hand, you wrap it.
Exactly. So, and he estimated that 45 yards would be used by a woman, 30 yards for a man, and 6 yards for a child. And he said, wow, that's a lot of market.
It's a lot of
so
money.
So you better start going in the direction of Nigeria to make a lot of money. So he spoke to the Manchester Chamber of Commerce, and that was the beginning of dumping cotton on Nigeria. So they had about 31 million yards of fabric used annually. And only 31 million, 30 million were done by indigenous artists. It means that the artists could cater for the textile needs of the people.
Yes.
So if we had continued on that path, we would have done much more for ourselves than
Yes.
what we have now. So we have this history of this very rich history of textile, but now we have Nigeria, looking out to import fabrics that we could easily have made.
Yes.
Given our history.
Yes. Yeah, but I think things are changing now, changing back to where we were, and I think that with technology it makes it more possible to see where we can go with it. So I was intrigued by that piece, and of course what you said now about the different aspects of palette of Ibadan, the dumping ground, and that is a critique of what has happened to us commercially in our country. But looking today now, as I said, it brings us to today, where people like you are connecting us to the past so that the young ones can use the knowledge that you're sharing to dig deep and see how we can bring our own power back. Are you hopeful about that?
Well, I think I'm hopeful. And one of the things I didn't mention about that work is that, in a sense, it also celebrates those who have kept the tradition going. People like Nike and Kundai, late Adebayo Fanati. They will wear these fabrics and celebrate it. It was a form of identity for them. Wole Soyinka also.
Yes.
Akinwumi Ishola.
Yes.
Dele Jegede. These are people who celebrate our textiles, our traditional textiles, and wear them with so much pride.
Yes.
And Indigo is blue.
Yes.
But we all wear, our children wear jeans.
Yes. It's indigo though.
It's indigo.
Yeah.
So we must let them know the importance of sustaining this tradition.
Yes.
These are things that evolve from the culture. They have their significance. They also had meaning. The textile patterns also had meaning. And we talked about everything in the environment, even things that are also historical. So there's so much richness in this textile.
Yes.
And we need to pass it on to our children, to the younger generation.
There's also the discussion about whether actually, in terms of cost, whether the actual indigo itself as a plant can be kept going. Does it matter to you? Or is it more important that we have everything else about indigo dyeing, about dyeing and adire, kept rather than having to insist that we must have the indigo plant? Are you okay with using the German dyes, using the new types of dyes? Do you have any preference or do you have any strong ideas about either?
Well, I would say that indigo fir, the plant, is a vegetable dye.
Yes.
The dyes are extracted from this vegetable material. And so it's environment friendly.
Yes.
It's also very good on the skin.
Yes.
It's not as coarse as the caustic soda.
Yes.
Based dyes that we use.
Yes.
And when you look at it, the entire textile industry, when you go to those who produce large quantities as textile,
yes,
you find that they just resort to buying things from outside.
Yes.
They import a large number of dyes into Nigeria.
Yes.
They also import a large number of fabrics because of the fabrics are imported.
Yes.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of the materials, you're using 99.9% from outside of Nigeria. So the only thing you're doing is creating a design. Taking the German dyes and putting it on fabrics from elsewhere,
yes,
from the UK
or
or from the US,
from China.
Or from China, and then you're asking yourself now, is it Nigerian made? Even though it is made by Nigerians, but then what is it? It doesn't make much sense because we had this tradition of making fabrics. They were hand woven, they spun the cotton, they made them into yarns, they dyed the yarns, and they wove them on looms. We have to think about how we can go back to that process again and become more self-sufficient,
yes,
rather than depend on foreign markets,
yes,
or importation of this goods. And I think that's what Nigeria is thinking about now. So that for you to be self-sufficient and also have a sustainable industry,
yes,
rather than relying so much on importation.
Yes, I mean, there's a whole buzzword. But sustainability is a big buzzword in the world now, especially in fashion. And I always say to people that, our traditions are sustainable, totally. We don't have to look very far. We just have to go back to what we used to do and, do more of that. And that's exactly what you're saying now. Can we move on over to stamping history?
Okay, great.
Another piece of your exhibition that I was intrigued by. I literally had never seen that before. I do a lot of research and I read a lot, and I always try to know a lot about everything. And I looked at this piece and I was like, I have no idea what she's doing here. But yeah, I had forgotten that in fact, yes, Adire is stamped on, as part of the process actually. But the installation was the work was so strong and like could have been anything. It could have been a piece of art that you just decided to create that had no, you know what I mean? But it was laden with history and not just historically the method in making Adire, but also historically about colonization, about the connection with the rest of West Africa, about how, in fact, how we live is kind of a mishmash of a lot of our history. And you also talked through that with me, and also we looked at some of the patterns, and we realized that some of the patterns are literally have nothing to do with our culture, but looks equally beautiful, just set together with ours. It had additions of symbols from Ghana, and I found that really intriguing. I mean, I'm sure you've got a lot of positive responses from that particular work.
Definitely, people loved it a lot.
Okay, tell me about your feeling about it. I know about your inspiration, but what is it that touches you the most about that work?
Okay, I would say stamping history. We're talking about stamps here. The templates that we use to create patterns.
Yes.
And the fact that also talks about the history of textile. One thing that inspired me greatly to do this exhibition was to bring together the experiences I've had over the years. Not just working with people from different communities, but also teaching in the university, teaching students art, doing my own art, and teaching young people, students in local communities, and also public schools within the Surulere area, where the center is located. Now, in that area, you have people from West Africa. They've been there for many years. The Shita Akarele artists. You find artists from Gambia, from Ghana, from Senegal, who are doing amazing textiles. And even there, they speak Yoruba languages. Some of them are even intermarried.
Yes. And
because of the work I was doing with secondary schools, I was teaching in secondary schools, going with artists to impact out of textile design. And they caught on very easily, very, very quickly. So I got some of these artisans to also come along. For me, it was important to break that barrier that these are local artisans, keep them in their space, but to bring them into the school environment.
Yes.
I could have a body of knowledge, indigenous knowledge that has been passed on to the younger generation. So doing that work, I realized that I could also draw from the wealth of information that they also had. And I met with those who were doing patterns, those who were also carving the templates that I used for designing. I thought that we could actually work with these materials. The templates, which are made with foam,
yes,
it's an urban material, okay? The older ones were done with wooden stamps, actually wooden stamps.
Do they exist?
Not anymore. I think in Ghana they still use the wooden stamps. So they dip them into wax, hot wax, and put on a cloth.
Yes.
But the foam has a way of absorbing the wax. So it gives more wax, and when you put it on the cloth, it protects the area that is covered with the wax, much more than the wooden stamps. And
so it's an innovation. It's an innovative, yes, an innovation.
Well, see, if you don't document this, it just goes off. Somebody comes later to say that I did this.
Yes.
You can argue, but when you document them, and that was one way of documenting this history. And so I caught a number of the patterns, but I also realized that instead of doing the work, why don't you get these artists who are doing this and bring them into this exhibition, because they, in a sense, capture about 30 to 40 years of textile history.
It's crazy.
So I also say that the textile patterns appear on cloth. We all buy the cloth, we want to look pretty.
Yes.
But the stamps remain in the artist's studio and the atelier. And it also bears the mark of the artist, has that same design that appears on cloth. So why don't we install the templates as art in themselves? So that's exactly what I did. So I brought in these templates and installed them. And what is interesting again is that it tells you that even though Adire Eleko is strictly a Yoruba idiom. The art is growing. It's picking up concepts from here and there, from different cultures, and is expanding, so that you cannot say now that it's a typically Yoruba art form anymore. It is extended to incorporate other ideas, and this has enriched it a great deal. So for me, putting those stamps there was also a way of not just putting out the iconic patterns that we know of Adire, but also looking at some kind of social change, how patterns are coming from technology, from popular culture.
Yes.
And you saw the smiling.
Yeah, I saw emojis.
Emojis were there. Some of the symbols that we send on our telephones were also there. And it also means that this art caters for the older generation and also the younger generation. So children came into the place. Oh, but look at this, it's beautiful. Oh, I know this song, this symbol and all of that. And when you see the Adinkra symbols also represented there, it speaks to the multicultural population that you find in that environment. And I thought that this was really very heavy. It was multi-layered, and I wanted to bring it into the gallery space for people to see and appreciate.
Yes. Stunning, stunning. I know you said that you probably that piece in particular had gone, and that you would create another piece.
Yes, we have one amazing piece for this exhibition.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
It has a lot more colors, not just the light green that appeared in that first exhibition. Because if you go to the markets, like I told you that Nigeria is like a dumping ground for a lot of things coming in from here and there. In the past, we just find like green foam or maybe brown. Now you have orange, you have a broad range. But the artist is able to draw on these bright colors and use them. So what I've done here is to dye some of the foam stamps and to create a variety, which really has come out very beautiful.
Amazing, very, very exciting. So the last portion, well, second to the last portion, is the screen. The screen that, I forget what that
was
called. Orimikwe. Now, on its own, as an art piece, again, is stunning. I mean, I was just telling you that I loved the sort of presentation of it at the beginning when the students were walking with these like really beautiful panels. I love the geometry. I just literally fell in love with that piece. Can you tell us about that piece actually?
Yeah, that was done in metal. It's actually made of mild steel. I was my first attempt at using the plasma machine to cut metal. For me, I was looking at how to engage with cloth. Only one work in the entire exhibition is made entirely of cloth.
Yes.
So I thought I should take away textile from the domain of cloth or crafts, just crafts.
Yes.
And to elevate it to a more scholarly platform where people can engage with it and talk about it as a very serious art form. So I thought I could also use other materials, to represent the idea. So that work is done entirely of mild steel, and there are 96 pieces. They're all squares, and I drew on all the old patterns I could lay my hands on to create the design. The wrappers that were done using the real makeup technique were painted. The core was painted, with feathers.
Yes.
And sometimes stenciled. They use the core is passed through stencils to increase the number of yardage. But the typical Yoruba artist, female artist, would paint the design, the core on the cloth, and it would take like 2 or 3 weeks to create just one single wrapper. And the male thought that would take forever. And they felt that it would be better for them to devise a means of making stencils so they could mass produce these designs. And so in a sense, that work celebrates the entry of male into what you have known, what an art that was strictly female preserved. And having 16 young men carry each of the 6 rows of stencils was to bring them into the gallery, to install them and take them out to show people that these are the designs that were created, done by women. But we can now extend this idea so that we have more people sharing this wonderful experience of the iconography that we have that survived till date.
Yes.
So that's what Olubikwe means the head is correct. And indeed, your head had to be correct. for you to do that kind of art, for you to devise this very elaborate way of extracting blue from green leaves, and also creating a very complex way of making a lye, which was used to dissolve the insoluble dye so that the fabrics can absorb the dye. So their heads were really complete, and I shared that vision that my head is also complete.
Your head was more complete in that piece. That was magnificent. Also the motifs you chose and the way they were placed together, it's really magnificent and very, very engaging piece.
Thank you. And then the work itself, I left the metal to rust, also to show that these stencils were used over and over and over and over again. So it actually bears the age of the stencils, and I left it that way, that very rustic way, form, so that people can appreciate that these things were used over and over again. I wasn't going to paint them, so it was appreciated the way it was displayed.
Amazing. The last segment of, or second to the last, sorry, I keep saying that, is the ceramic, the influence, the introduction of, your introduction of the indigo color and application on ceramic vases. We don't see it often. I know it's done, but we don't actually see it often. And it was so beautifully done, and I know you did it personally. So I'd like you to talk to us briefly also about that.
Okay. That's what was titled, Bring It in the Sheaves. And I was looking at this, calling this Christian code, Bring It in the Sheaves, which I call rejoicing. And I just imagined that every time we caught a fresh set of leaves, indigo leaves, I wondered how the artist felt. What possibilities with these leaves bring? What kind of patterns were made from this crop of leaves that have just been cut? So I envisioned that, and I felt that it would be nice for me to put the pots. And these containers are very significant. The artists understood the alchemy of the materials they worked with. They knew that they had to build in bacteria in their vats so that they have a deeper intensity of hue. And so they didn't use plastic containers, they used earthenware. So the pots were porous, the walls of the pots were porous to air and gases, so the air could actually penetrate and allow the bacteria to form.
Oh, interesting. I never knew that, actually.
To aid the bacterial formation. So pots are very significant. And because it was fabric designing, it also talked about the fact that it also relates to the art of pottery as well.
Yes.
So that's also another very vibrant art form that is worthy of engaging with as well. Because we have a very rich tradition of pottery making that dates back to 500 years before Christ.
You know, but I can't see them anywhere anymore.
Yeah, because plastics have replaced pots. That's very sad. But if you go to Ilorin, you will find a lot of potters that are still producing. There used to be a place very close to Benin, Use village. It was known for pottery. A lot of potters have deserted the art because pots are also very cheap. So we left it, and there's so much plastic around that. It doesn't encourage them to continue to produce. That's what I'm saying about sustainability. We must find a way in which we can keep these traditions going. Maybe by buying up their works and putting them in places where the artists could get value for whatever they produced. So it's not like we had like 20 or 30 years ago, pottery is actually dying. So that installation brings pottery into view. We were talking about textiles.
Yes.
So I took these patterns again and painted them on the body of the pots, and also created, painted the inside blue to make it look like you had a vat.
Yes.
Shiny.
Okay.
So I had it here, really like these bowls were used, these pots were used for dyeing.
Yes.
Fabric. So that installation had quite a number of their own personal fabrics I brought over time.
Yes.
And also talks about how artists can bring in their own personal history to a collective history, because everybody could connect with the fabrics that are there. When cloth comes out in the market, you buy, I buy, it captures historical time.
Yes.
And then it goes, and another one comes out.
Yes.
So you could tell that with those fabrics, people could relate to them. You could say, oh, my grandmother had this cloth. Oh my God, my mother had this cloth.
Yes.
And it just shows that it's about our own history as well. Not just about me. I wear the cloth, but you probably have it from way.
Yes.
And that installation was just talked about the process of extraction, where you have the emu,
Yes.
made into balls,
Yes.
put aside, and then the raffia that was used to tie for the Indigo
Yes.
technique.
Yes.
All of these were vegetable materials, nothing imported.
Yes.
So we have to think about how we can revive these traditions, because they are very kind to us, those environment-friendly techniques, and uses very simple tools, mundane tools, but it's also very complex technology.
Yes.
I must find a way of preserving these indigenous knowledge systems and passing them on to other generations as well.
Yes. So from what you have said, Indigo Reimagined, I mean, it's not just about Indigo as we see, and that's what you showed. But what I also love about it is that it's a great commentary about the state of the arts, the state of how we live today, by linking history to today, and making us understand that what we had previously was great, it was beneficial to us, it was beautiful, people were very talented, and to celebrate, and also celebration. And it's this connection, these connections that are so intriguing in one person's work at a moment, and also a reflection of your own history and our own history. And that's what makes it so special, and that's what makes you so special. In your young age, your ability to have connected so much history and putting into practice, and also making so much impact on a lot of young people on the way our culture can be perceived in the world, because you're a very well-traveled artist and academic, and the fact that you are transferring what you know to a young generation. All this is tremendous for anyone, and to have you sitting in Alara and with me chatting about all these achievements is a real honor. It's an honor because I really admire you. I think that what you do is amazing, and I hope you continue to do what you do, to educate us, to enrich us, to add beauty to our lives, and to also set the tone for what the future can look like. So that's why it was so thrilling to meet you, and also more thrilling that you agreed to have your exhibition moved to Alara. I'm super excited. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you very much.
I'm very happy that you found this moment to come and talk to us, that we can share this with a lot of people on what your history has been, what inspired this beautiful, beautiful exhibition, and your little gems about what we can be doing in the future, especially what we can do together as two people who are very concerned about what happens to our culture in Nigeria and Africa in general. I'm so happy that we're able to sit down today, and I'd like to stay in touch, and so that we can continue to celebrate a great Alara woman, a great Nigerian, just a great woman in general. Thank you very much for speaking to me today.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.